Welcome, Formula One fans, to the Formula One News Hour. I'm Jonathan Steele, your host. Formula One News Hour is coming to you from Austin, Texas. We're going to break this Formula One News Hour up into a number of segments, probably of about 15, 20 minutes each, as the Formula One race weekend is broken up essentially into 3, sometimes 4 parts. You have the practice sessions on Friday, you've got the qualifying on Saturday, and the race on Sunday. And of course, sometimes Formula Practice 3 is held early on Saturday mornings before the actual qualifying session. So there's 3 to 4 sections there. And then we're also going to start each week with the history of Formula One, looking back from the Formula One days early in the 50s all the way through to today. And there's enough fodder there to keep us going, of course, for the next 20 years, just doing Formula One history. But anyway, myself, I've been following Formula One since I was about 10, 12 years old, which makes it about 60 years that I've been following it and enjoying both the races, the drivers, all of the turmoils and all of the different things that happened through Formula One since that time. First thing I want to do is thank our sponsors. Yes, we've got some sponsors to thank, which is a great way to start our podcast. So we want to thank Give Send Go, Cloud Hub, Phenology, L American, Inform America, Off the Press, and Moms for Liberty. Thank you to all those folks for being sponsors on our very first podcast. And we'll talk about a little more about each of our sponsors during the course of the podcast. So anyway, what I thought we'd do on the history is talk a little bit, like I said, about the drivers, the cars, and all that kind of stuff. And so what I want to do for the very first one is I want to talk about what I think is probably the greatest Formula One driver of all time. That is Jim Clark. Jim Clark was born in 1936, and he died on the Hockenheim track on April the 7th, 1968. So he had a fairly short Formula One career, and so many people will ask, well, why do you think that Jim Clark is the greatest Formula One driver of all time? And of course, we're going to get into that more and more as time goes by here. But one of the things there's 2 or 3 reasons that we think that Jim Clark is the greatest Formula One driver of all time, and that's because, you know what, 50 years after his death, I think he died in 1968. So, you know, with all of those years past, there's still a number of records surviving that Jim Clark set that have not been broken. And when you think about the drivers back then and what they did and how they did it, they were a very different type of driver, and they got into Formula One in a very different way. And so let's just take a look at Jim Clark's life and see, you know, whether by the end of this podcast or the end of this section of this podcast, whether you'll agree with me. You know, it's very hard to pick the greatest of all times in this day and age, whether it be the greatest tennis player of all time, the greatest soccer player of all time, you know, the greatest football quarterback of all time, the greatest golfer of all time. It's just because of the techniques and the equipment and all those things that have changed over the years, then it gets to be very hard. But I think in motor racing, you could say, well, maybe it's not as hard as other sports, because we have to look at the cars, and we have to look at the cars today, and then the records built in those cars. You know, Jim Clark only started 57 Formula One Grand Prix. He started 70 Grand Prix in all, but back then they used to drive both Junior Formula, and which we call Formula 2 now, and Formula 1 cars. In fact, he died in a Junior Formula car. So, you know, when you look at the way the drivers and the things they did then and what they do now, they're very, very different. So, anyway, Jim Clark started his racing career when he was, 16, 17 years old. But he started very, very differently to the way the drivers started today. Jim Clark grew up on a hill farm. In fact, he and I have a couple of things in common. We both grew up on hill farms on the borders area of Scotland. He grew up on the Scottish side of the border. I grew up on the English side of the border. We both grew up in almost identical houses. You'd think that when you look at pictures of our houses that we grew up in, you'd think the same guy built them. So there's some little common things there. But the reason I bring that up is because when you grow up on a hill farm in northern England, you start driving at a very early age. I was driving and Jim Clark was driving tractors by the time we were 5, 6, 7 years old, and we were driving cars by the time we were 8, 9, 10 years old. And we weren't driving on the nice smooth roads that you have today that the drivers start on, driving go-karts. These were literally just dirt roads cut into the side of into the hills and into the ground that literally just dirt. So we learned to drive cars on dirt road, which gave us the ability to be able to handle cars in very different ways. So it was that Jim Clark started his driving career as soon as he got his driver's license. By that time, he'd already had a lot of experience driving. And so his very first car was a Sunbeam Talbot. And he turned that Sunbeam Talbot into a rally car, which makes sense. It doesn't make sense that he turned the Sunbeam Talbot into a rally car, but it makes sense that the very first races that he would drive would be rallies, because car rallies often go off, not off-road as we think cross country, but they use roads through the forests and through the countryside that a lot of time literally just, as I said, tracks cut into the ground so that you could drive a car on them. So Jim started driving that way, and the first couple of years of his life, he was driving that Sunbeam Talbot both in rallies and in what we called touring car events back then, which were, literally your family car turned into a race car, as Jim's car was. So he spent a couple of years doing that, and then he joined the Border Reivers Racing Club, which was right there on the Scottish side of the borders, not far from where Jim grew up. And this got him into sports car racing. He got into driving things like Jaguar D-types and Porsches and things like that. So now he's driving a whole different type of race car, and he's winning races in them. And in fact, he's driving a Jaguar D-type at a race down at Brands Hatch in England. Brands Hatch was kind of the original Formula One track for the British Grand Prix. Now it's held at Silverstone. But he came second in that race, driving a Jaguar D-type, and he came second to a guy called Colin Chapman. And after that race, Colin Chapman came over to Jim Clark and started talking to him. And pretty soon, Jim Clark had a ride in a junior Formula car. Colin Chapman, for those of you who don't know, was the founder and the owner of Lotus Cars. The cars you see driving around today were, of course, Colin Chapman designed and built cars. And his legacy carries on in many ways. And in fact, next week we'll do our history of the Formula One on Colin Chapman. So from Junior Formula, Jim went on, just a year later, Colin Chapman put him into a Formula One car. And it was during the early days of Jim driving Formula One cars that his talent really started to show. He didn't win his first race, but he came in third. But quite soon thereafter, Jim was winning Formula One races and was on the way to becoming what we consider the greatest Formula One driver of all time. And it's interesting because many people have said that Fangio is the greatest Formula One driver of all time, but it was Fangio that actually said that, in his opinion, the greatest Formula One driver of all time was Jim Clark. Fangio also said another interesting thing. Fangio said that, in his opinion, that the responsibility of winning a Formula One race was 60% car and 40% driver. It was his opinion that that gap would close considerably over time as the cars got better, because back in those days, the cars were incredibly unreliable and broke down a lot. They many times didn't finish the races, and many times they crashed just because of poor design, poor manufacturing, poor everything. And it wasn't because the people doing these things were poor. They just didn't have the equipment. The equipment to build the cars, the lathes, the CNC machines, the casting blocks, and all those different things that go into making car parts. They just didn't have the ability to make the quality parts like they do today. So anyway, when I look at today's car races and thinking back to what Fangio said, I'm thinking that today maybe the car is 90-95% responsible for winning a race, and maybe the driver is 5 to 10% responsible. You can kind of look at how those things might play out to be true when you look at the last race there in Hungary, when Max Verstappen started 10th. He ended up winning the race, but he should not have won that race. But he won that race because of great teamwork on the part of his team and bad teamwork on the part of Charles Leclerc. So when you look at it, Verstappen actually spun out during that race, did a whole 360 degrees spin, and yet could still go on to win the race. However, Charles Leclerc's team decided to bring him in for hard tires when other teams had already proven that hard tires were not the tire for that track. So as it turns out, Leclerc was leading the race when the team decided to bring him in for hard tires, and it was only 2 or 3 laps later they realized the mistake and they had to bring him back in, change the tires again, by which time he dropped from first to about 5th or 6th, which is where he finished the race. So if you just looked at those two events, you could say, you know what, the team is certainly a lot more responsible along with the car for winning a race than the actual driver. Okay, so going back to my point on, the greatest driver of all times and what Jim Clark did and how he started to get there to earn this title, you have to look at from this perspective of the different cars that Jim drove. He got to Formula One by going through and driving rally cars, touring cars, sports cars, junior Formula cars, and then Formula One cars. And during the season, he would alternate between all of those different cars. He would win the Tasman Series down in Australia, New Zealand. He'd win touring car series events. He'd win sports car series events. And in 1965, he holds one of the records that is still unbroken today, along with being Formula One world champion. He took time out of the Formula One season, flew to the United States and entered the Indy 500 and won it. Colin Chapman and Jim Clark were actually the first team to enter a rear-engined race car into the Indy 500. They did that back in 1963. Another interesting thing about what Jim did in 1965 was he won pole position of every race that he won, and he won every lap of every race that he won. That makes it that he scored the most points that you were able to score in a year in a Formula One series, and he won the highest percentage of races that year that could be won. So and when we're talking about the highest percentages, we're not just talking about the races that he won, but the number of laps that he led and won. And like I say, he led and won every lap, every pole, and every race during that 1965 season. So incredible things that he did, especially when you consider the cars. The cars were really heavy. They were hard to drive. They obviously didn't have the design things that they have today. Back then they had real gearboxes, real gear levers. And in fact, in one of the races that Jim won, the gear lever came off in his hand halfway through the race. And so he's having to contend with things that they don't have to contend with today. One, the gear lever, but also back then you had to, what they call double the clutch, and you had to toe and heel. Double the clutching was something that you had to do in order to get from sixth to fifth to fourth to third and so on, so that you could get the engine RPM to match the speed of the car. The other thing, toe and heeling, is the ability to work the brake, the clutch, and the gas pedal all at the same time. So you would be working the brake and the gas pedal with one foot while working the clutch with the other. And in that particular race where the gear lever came out, Jim had to steer with one hand for the rest of the race, because typically in those days, and if you look at the Formula One cars today, you'll see it when they're driving, that the gear changes are going on about every 3 seconds on average. You know, the longest time they go without changing gear is while they're going down the straightaways. But as they're going through the corners, the gear changes are fast and furious. So just really, really incredible things that Jim Clark did. And you can go out onto the internet and you can find out a lot about him. He was my childhood hero. I started following him when I was about 12 years old. And that was right at Jim's first year in Formula One. He had of course been in Junior Formula the year before that, but right as he started doing Formula One races, then I was following him. So really exciting times back then for Jim. It was really sad that he died, and in fact, Graham Hill, who was a fellow Formula One champion back then, you know, he made the comment, you know, if this can happen to Jim, what chance do we have? And you know what he was really referring to was that everybody thought that Jim Clark was such a great driver that he would never die in a crash. Graham Hill fortunately finished his Formula One career without crashing. Unfortunately, he died while flying his plane from France back to England in 1975. And we'll talk more about those things in history. We'll certainly do a history of Graham Hill, because he too was one of the greater drivers, along with Jackie Stewart, Jackie Ickx, John Surtees, and a few others that did some remarkable things. Sterling Moss, drove rally cars and drove Formula One cars as well. So, you know, just to go back a few minutes before we finish up this segment of why I believe Jim Clark is the greatest Formula One driver in history, we need to look at how the Formula One car drivers of today get into the sport and compare their abilities today of what the Jim Clarks, Jackie Stewarts, Graham Hills and the guys of yesteryear. You know, John Surtees, mentioned him a little while ago. He was actually a world champion motorcycle racer and Formula One champion racer. So anyway, if you look at the drivers of today, they start off when they're 6, 7, 8 years old driving go-karts. Not the good kind of go-kart that you're going to find at your county fair, but these go-karts can easily do, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, and it takes a lot of skill to drive them and keep them on the track. And that's how the Formula One drivers of today start. But they've got to be, by the time they're 14, 15, they've got to be so good that the big teams, the Red Bulls, the Ferraris, the Mercedes are looking at these guys to bring them into the Formula One world, so that they bring them in and they give them contracts, they get them into Formula 3, Formula 2, and then Formula 1, which is, that's the path that Russell has taken. It's the path that Norris took, Leclerc, Verstappen. If you look at all of the top drivers right now, they all came up through karting. They've known each other for a long time. Leclerc and Verstappen spent a lot of time competing against each other in go-karts. And so to be a Formula One world champion today means that all you drive is Formula One cars. which is very different to the drivers of yesterday. When you look at the drivers of yesterday compared to today, today's drivers are very one-dimensional. Does not make them bad drivers, quite the opposite. They're very, very, very good. But they don't have to contend with a gear lever. They don't have to contend, with double declutching and all these kinds of things. They can focus on just keeping the car on the track, steering it well, getting those gears right, and getting the car set up for the corners properly so that they go into the corners and come out of the corners without the rear wheels breaking away, which they've learned to do in karting. That's the great thing about karting, is it teaches them to do that. Whereas the drivers of yesteryear, they were learning to do that on all different types of cars, and then during the year, as we mentioned, they'd get in and drive all different types of cars and win in all different types of cars. So nothing to take away from the guys of today, but will the records that they're setting be unbroken in 50 years from now? It could well be. It could well be that we don't see another 8-time Formula One world champion, or we don't see another Lewis Hamilton. It's just hard to say. But when you look at the driver and then look at the records, and if you've got one record in 50 years from now, okay, still a great achievement. But Jim Clark's got at least 3, maybe 4 records that are unbroken, and from cars that were not what we would call reliable or aerodynamic or anything. I mean, it was amazing what the guy was able to do. Folks, I want to thank one of our sponsors now as we come to the end of our history of Formula One for this weekend, and I want to thank CloudHub. CloudHub is a very different social media site. There are lots of social media sites out there, and a few of them, and the big ones in particular, they censor everything that you see, do, read, and whatever, especially what you say. And it's not right. We live in a country and we live in the times where free speech is probably the most important thing that we have. And so when different folks are censoring what you're saying, or what you're showing, or what you're reposting, they're censoring that just because they don't agree with it, or because they think their fact checkers, which by the way are opinion makers, their fact checkers don't agree with it. Then that's really not a good platform to be on. What you need to be on is CloudHub. CloudHub has all of the things that your big time social media sites have, and a couple of other things. It's got an events portion where you can throw a concert in your backyard and invite 2 or 3 million of your closest friends to watch and enjoy it with you. It has channels, so you can start your own channel and put out your own podcast down there. And invite all the different folks out there on the internet to come and join you. We'll certainly be posting these podcasts to a channel on CloudHub. So again, please go to cloudhub.com. That is cloudhub.com, and drop those other social media sites and get into doing all your social media on CloudHub. That is cloudhub.com. So a few things happened while we were away taking our summer break. The Formula One Design Committee was not taking a break. It decided that Mercedes' desire to have them change some of the designs was really a valid design change requirement, and so Mercedes got their way, and Formula One came out with new standards for design to help Mercedes design out of their cars the porpoising that has plagued them from the beginning of the year. So not really big news, not unexpected news, but certainly it's a sign of yet again big money playing its part in Formula One, and Mercedes getting their way. Probably bigger news is that Danny Ricciardo is out at McLaren, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. I think that Danny Ricciardo's time at McLaren was in danger anyway, because he just really hasn't performed to the standards that he should. When he was at Renault, he did very well, and actually when he was at Red Bull a few years ago, he did well. He has just won one race for McLaren. Okay, that is the one race in the last 10 years that they've won, but they've decided to go their separate ways. Quite frankly, I think that Danny Ricciardo should have stayed with Red Bull. He's never had Formula One champion written all over him, and if he'd stayed at Red Bull, I think he could have been, especially the last 2 years, he could have been consistently a podium finish driver, but that, alas, never came to be. He did well at Renault, finishing up there in the top 5 a lot of the times. But here at McLaren, he's been down there in the 10s and the 12s, while his teammate has been up there in the 4 and 5s, and has probably had a couple more podium finishes than Danny Ricciardo. He could just never get used to the McLaren car. So I'm going to make a prediction. And the prediction is that Danny Ricciardo will replace Mick Schumacher at the end of this year as the driver for Haas. Haas is not really happy with Mick Schumacher, doesn't want to spend the time training him and trying to bring him to be the caliber of driver that his father was. And so I predict that Mick Schumacher will be gone out of Haas at the end of the year, and Danny Ricciardo will replace him. So now we've got practice sessions this morning, so let's get right to it. Practice number 1 is underway, and we will have the results in just a moment. It is practice day. We have to start today's session, a podcast, with a little bit of news, and that is Audi will join Formula One in 2026. That's kind of exciting. There's been talk for a while about Porsche. Not a lot of talk about Audi, but it was announced earlier today that Audi will join the Formula One circuit in 2026. So let's get right into a practice session. It's just started. There is a little spot of rain going on, and they're expecting some showers, so that could affect the final outcome of today's practice sessions. Each practice session is about an hour long, and the practice sessions really have no basis or any determine any outcome. What it does do is it gives you a good idea of how the cars are faring on the track, how well the setup is, and what kind of pace we can be expecting for race days. So we're going to go in now and see how things are going. It looks to me like with 7 minutes into the practice session, now both Red Bulls are leading the field. Max Verstappen, I don't know why I keep messing his name up, but Max Verstappen is leading with a time right now of 1:46. He's just clicked in at 1:45, with Perez about 3/4 of a second behind. I expect Verstappen to drop down into the 1:44s and maybe 1:43 before the end of practice session today. And now we're at 35 minutes into the practice session, and it certainly looks like both Ferraris are making the adjustments necessary to start getting the speed out of them. As Carlos Sainz has just taken over the fastest lap pace from Max Verstappen, and it's Verstappen, John, not Verstappen. It's Verstappen has just taken over the P1 position, and it looks like Carlos Sainz is doing very well. Leclerc has dropped back into around 5th position. Perez is still holding his own. He's up there now, back into 3rd again. He had dropped down momentarily into 4th. So it looks like the Red Bull cars really are very, very competitive at this track, and they've got the right setup, and the drivers are very comfortable with their cars. So it looks like we have a red flag condition. It looks like, so what has happened is that Magnussen's car has just died on the side of the track, and they have a high voltage situation, they believe, which means that that car can't be touched until the engineers have gone through the processes to make it safe to touch. These cars have very high electrical charges going through them that helps them actually get speed and acceleration. And Magnussen's car has just died on the side of the track. He's just jumped out. He's climbing over to the wall right now, and he's getting away from that car as much as possible. So practice has red flagged for the time being, and it looks like it could be 10 or 15 minutes before they get the track back to green flag again. And with only 22 minutes left in the first practice session, it could well be that when we go back to green, that there's very little time left for the cars to do much other than maybe get 1 to 2 laps in. So let's take a look and keep watching and seeing what's happening here. So we got 5 minutes now left into practice 1, and we've got some rain that's also come along now. So they've just gone back to green flag. They've got some rain at one of the corners, which is going to slow the cars down considerably. And if it gets too bad, of course, they'll just end it. The drivers, they won't need a red flag. They'll just decide to pull it in and call it a practice session. So it looks like the Red Bulls are going to end practice 1 in really good shape, and followed by Ferraris. And then you've got actually Lando Norris is doing really well, and to a surprise, so is Danny Ricciardo. They're up there in the 10th. It looks like that Norris is right now at around P4, which is a nice surprise for McLaren. I get that they'll be very happy with that. In fact, I can imagine they're very happy with having both cars up there in the top 10 right now. A surprise coming to the end of P1 is that Valtteri Bottas has kind of dropped down. He's down below number 15 now, and it does not look like we've lost one of the Haas cars, but it does not look like the changes that they had made over the summer is going to help them out too much, because even Mick Schumacher, not Michael, his daddy was Michael, Mick Schumacher is down in the 17th position. So it's quite interesting to see one of the Williams cars way up there. The Williams car is at P6 right now, which is incredibly good, because before the summer break, I don't think a Williams car made it much above P12. So it seems like whatever the Williams team was doing over the summer break, it's paying off quite well. Although Nicholas Latifi is hanging out where Nicholas Latifi generally hangs out, and that is down there in P19. Of course, Magnussen is at P20 because he can't drive his car right now. So as P1 comes to an end, it is Max Verstappen back in the fastest lap position, with Carlos Sainz and Ricardo Perez behind him. Then comes in Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. So P2 will be coming up in just about 15 minutes from now, and we'll be following along with that as it happens. So as P2 begins, some things of note is that it looks like both Ferrari and Red Bull are going to take engine penalties, which is going to drop them back to the back of the pack. Well, so what will happen is they will wherever they finish in the final times will determine in what order of the back of the pack they'll be. So some of them, a couple of them will start at 2019. My guess is that Ferrari's going to start probably around 17th, maybe 16th, and then Red Bull, Max Verstappen will start around maybe 15th, 16th, 15th area. But still, so quite a bit back in the field. But if they manage to maintain the track times that they're doing, it would mean that Verstappen will be back certainly in podium position by the middle of the race tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but Sunday. If he maintains his 1.5 second lap time advantage over the field, which looks like he's able to do, then certainly he's going to make up those positions fairly quickly. So the only thing that would be left to question would be whether Red Bull would leave Sergio Perez in the lead and let him win the race, or if they'd pull the team thing and say, okay, Sergio, you got to let Max win this race, because let's face it, they want to win world championships. They want to win the driver world championship. They want to win the car championship. It looks like they're going to win the car championship without too much trouble, and the driver championship as long as nothing bad really happens. I mean, remember, there's still a lot of races left in the season, and so it's quite possible that Max Verstappen could lose out. So that if it gets down to it, I'm sure they're going to pull in team orders and have Sergio Perez give way to first place to Max Verstappen. So anyway, that's the news going in, and we're in now to about 5 to 10 minutes of practice session 2, and Verstappen now has got his times down to the low 144s, and the rest of the field is at 145, 146. It's really interesting that Mercedes are not making any improvement at all. So whatever they're doing to the cars during the pit stops here, it is having very little effect on the Mercedes position, and that's got to be quite concerning to them, because I would think that after the summer break here, that they had enough time to work on those cars to get real improvement. Before the break, they had pretty good improvement. They had a couple of thirds in there, and I think maybe at one time, if my memory serves me correctly, they had a second and third. Verstappen winning, and then George Russell and Lewis Hamilton coming in second and third. So that it looked like they were making some improvements. But certainly it's obvious that that Red Bull has used the time off to make improvements as well. And Ferrari seem to be maintaining good positions. We've still got Ferrari in second and sixth right now in speed, with Carlos Sainz doing what we all expected Charles Leclerc to do, and that is be up there with Red Bull and really put pressure on Red Bull. As you might remember, at the beginning of the season, he was leading the Formula One championship race by quite a large margin, because I think the first 2 races of the season, Max Verstappen did not finish. Or if he did not, I know he did not finish. Well, actually, I think in the first 4 races, there was 2 he did not finish, and 1 that he finished way back in the field due to a loss of power on his engine. So Leclerc had quite a good lead, and since then, between his mistakes and team mistakes, they've dropped well back, and that's not good for the sport, because we want to have more competition, and right now it does not look like there's a lot of competition for Red Bull. We just went through 4 or 5 years of Mercedes not having any competition, and now it looks like that it's flipped. And in Formula One, if you've been following it as long as I have, that the cars and drivers, they can dominate for a while, and then it kind of fades away and another one takes over. That's the great thing about sport and competition. The very best always have to keep trying to be the very best, because those behind them are going to come up and get level with them. And as we've seen with Red Bull take over from Mercedes, we've seen that happen. So let's take a look. We're getting into quite a way through practice session number 2 right now, and let's see, with 8:21 to go in practice session 2, it looks like that Mick Schumacher has lost it, and in fact, he has lost it. It looks like he couldn't get the car slow enough to go into the corner. He's gone straight on and he slid straight into the gravel. So that's not going to be very good for his car. And of course, it's not going to be very good for his chances of staying at Haas at the year end. But there's many reasons why the driver might lose it on the corner. But usually it's the fact that the driver hasn't got the car set up for that, and so he's back now. He's back under the track, but he hasn't done himself any favors by losing it there. So as we go on now, let's take a look and see where we're at. So like I was saying, it looks like that the modifications that some of the teams have made have backfired on them, and I would include Mercedes in that. And some of them, like Red Bull, and I would say Ferrari also looks like they've got good cars. They're not that far behind Red Bull. Like I said, okay. So in fact, Carlos Sainz just pulled within 0.655 of Verstappen's time, and that's pretty good. They're getting there. And it's how quickly Charles Leclerc can pull up. I'm still showing him in 4th position, and we've got just over 2 minutes left to go. And oh, wait a minute, we've got a red flag. We have a red flag at the end of the practice session 2 here, and it appears that Leclerc has lost it, and he's got off and into the tire wall. So not a good end for the practice session 2 or the day, because we're only going to have 2 practice sessions today. But not a good end for Leclerc to the day, and not a good end for the rest of the drivers too, because those drivers that were hoping to it looks like, okay, so it looks like that Ferrari has just, Carlos Sainz has just put in the fastest lap of the day. That red flag, he was able to finish his lap, and so now he will end the day with the fastest lap of the day, some 0.0244 of a second ahead of Max Verstappen, but I don't think that Red Bull are going to be too worried about that. Verstappen hasn't really been trying to add or take away time in the last 5 to 6 minutes. So it's so tomorrow it looks like we're going to have practice 3 and then qualifying. So it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow to see where the cars end up and who will end up on the pole. Given that Verstappen is going to be down there in P15 or 16, I'm thinking, because of the engine penalty, we could well see it's going to be Carlos Sainz or Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez that will be on pole position tomorrow. Or if not on pole, they'll maybe swap it out, and the two of them will be on the front row. Sometimes it's better to start second on these races than it is first. Many times we've seen the driver that starts second get into that first corner and get a better line on the corner and take the lead through that first corner. But so until tomorrow, then let's sign off, and we'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early with practice session 3 and then qualifying. This portion of the Formula One News Hour is brought to you by GiveSendGo. That is GiveSendGo.com. Folks, some things in life you just can't control, like losing a loved one or some other disaster strikes. We just never know what's going to happen. We wake up in the morning and life is good, and then we get thrown a curveball. But you can control which crowdfunding platform you decide to use to help you make it through one of these disasters. GiveSendGo is trusted in over 80 countries worldwide. It is the single, simple, reliable, crowdfunding platform that all can use. As the leader in freedom fundraising, then GiveSendGo guarantees people's voices are heard and valued. There is no censorship on GiveSendGo. GiveSendGo, whether you're in a hopeless situation or you have a friend in need, or you might be pursuing a lifelong dream, GiveSendGo has got your back. You can trust GiveSendGo to confidentially raise money for you or your loved ones. Please go to GiveSendGo.com. That is GiveSendGo.com when you or a friend or a family member is in need. Again, the best platform to use is GiveSendGo. Okay, Formula One news fans, we are back and we have the qualifying session about to start. It has been delayed a little bit because, as I mentioned in the piece on the third practice session, they have a sports car race between the practice session and the qualifying, and it was a sports car race, and one of the Porsches crashed and took out some of the safety barriers, so they've had to replace that. But we expect to get started here now in just a few moments. To be honest, I don't expect any of the anything to change dramatically during this this qualifying session. I would predict that Danny Ricciardo is going to struggle because he's struggling in practice. I would predict that Esteban Ocon is going to make it through to Q3 because the Williams car has just looked good, and I'm going to predict that Max Verstappen will end up qualifying in P1, but of course will take the grid penalties and then end up somewhere in around 15th or 16th at the end of the day. So they're off. The first session is underway. They're going through the warm-up laps, so we'll probably have 4 or 5 warm-up laps, and then we'll start to see where the cars are starting to fall out. Sorry, just checking what's happening here as we get into it. So with the first laps coming in, it looks like Sergio Perez is setting the pace. But then right behind him, of course, is his teammate Max Verstappen, and Max actually is about half a lap behind him. So we'll probably see Red Bull setting the race times, setting the pace times that are going to dominate the qualifying positions. I do expect that that Ferrari and in particular Carlos Sainz could well end up, as I said earlier, maybe yesterday during practice 1 and 2. I could see Carlos Sainz kind of making the pole position. So we'll just have to see how it goes on during the course of the morning here. So I was just checking on what's going on. Not a lot is happening. The Mercedes now are coming in for their first laps, and as expected, they're not doing that well. They're in the mid, actually low 10s, which of course will get them through to Q2, and obviously Q3. But you know, it's really interesting to see how much Mercedes is struggling, especially at this rate, at this stage of the year. But it's really encouraging to see the improvements that Williams have made. You know, Williams is a team with a rich history of Formula One championships, and in fact, the namesake for the Williams team, he died earlier this year. He'd been confined to a wheelchair after a serious accident some 15-20 years ago, but continued to run the team. Did a great job. Anyway, it looks like, yeah, there's a strange. That's very interesting. Valtteri Bottas has come in dead last in the first heats of the times coming in here. That is really surprising. He was not fast yesterday or this morning that much in qualifying in practice, but to be that bad, he's right at 3.5 seconds off the pace. That is amazing to me. Valtteri Bottas has consistently made Q1 made it to Q3 qualifying, every year that I can remember him racing. So that to me is a very strange one. That he's that far down. Let's see what's happening here. Verstappen and now Perez, looks like Perez and Lando Norris, all having really good times. When I say good times, remember these guys behind Verstappen are 1.5, 2 seconds back. That is a lot of time, a lot of time, because that means when we get down to racing tomorrow, Verstappen's going to have a 1.5, 2 second per lap advantage over the rest of the field. That is incredible. He's going to lap the entire field within 15 to... No, let me rephrase that. He's going to lap the end of the field by about lap 10 to 12, and he's going to lap the entire field by lap 20 to 22. The only people that he will not lap by that time are maybe the top three, the guys that at that time may be sitting in podium positions, which I expect would be Perez, Sainz, and by the looks of it, Lando Norris. I don't expect to see the Mercedes up there, but like we say, Mercedes have not performed well in practice and qualifying, but then come out on race day and done really well. So it's going to be really interesting to see. So we're coming up on the end of Q1, and it looks like let's see, we got just 3 minutes left in Q1. And it's looking like Lance Stroll, Latifi, Schumacher, Zhou Zhangwu, and Bottas are going to be dropped off. Danny Ricciardo is he's on the edge there. So any one of those guys could knock off Danny Ricciardo, and the one that I would look for would be Lance Stroll. He's probably got the best car, but also Zhou Zhangwu, who is also a really good driver and got a good car. He could also do that and get rid and move Danny Ricciardo out of the top 5. So okay, we're coming up. Let's see. So now we've just got in the Q1 pre-qualifying has ended. And of course, Latifi is down there because he's always down there. Magnussen and Bottas and can't quite make out who that. Anyway, so we've got the bottom 5 are out and we're in. But the good news for Danny Ricciardo is that he has made it out of the bottom 5 and is into qualifying 2, which will come up in about 5 minutes. So we're getting ready to start Q2 here, and one of the things that I want to note was the poor showings that both Hamilton and Russell had in the qualifying sessions. They were both in the bottom half of the top 10. So both Russell and Hamilton in the Mercedes continue to struggle, which like I say is pretty kind of interesting because Mercedes have been so good over the years. So what's the other thing that's really interesting that the commentators are just talking about on TV is that this is the first time since 2015 that Valtteri Bottas has failed to make it out of Q1. That is what, excuse me, 7, 8 years, which is very, very interesting. Something has got to be very wrong with that car for Bottas not to have made it out of Q1. So we've got now about 6, 7 minutes into Q2, and not surprising, the Red Bull cars are dominating. The Mercedes cars are over 2 seconds slower than the Red Bull cars, and at this level of Formula One racing, that is huge. If let's say this race is only 40 laps long, so that's 80 seconds, right? So that means they're going to be at the end of the race, they're going to be at least 80 seconds is 1 minute and 20 seconds. So when Max Verstappen finishes the race and wins this race, he'll be able to see the back end of those Mercedes cars, which, when you think about it, is just it's mind-boggling, because it's only just a year ago when Mercedes were dominating. Remember the last race of the season? If Latifi hadn't crashed, then they would have won both the Formula One Drivers' Championship and the Formula One's Constructors' Championship. They did win the Formula One Constructors' Championship, so that's really interesting. So Perez is looking very strong, but now it looks like that Carlos is also looking strong. In fact, Carlos is just out qualified, or not out qualified because it's not over yet, but his speeds are up there close to Max Verstappen. Like I said, I don't expect them to beat Max Verstappen, but that given the performance of the Red Bulls, that's some incredible work that Carlos is doing. So very interesting coming through there with essentially 2-3 minutes left in Q2. Folks, the airwaves today are filled with nothing but opinions and garbage. For every TV station you turn to, you're not getting the news, you're getting people's opinions. Folks, you need to go to a station where you can get your news as it is, real news, and not some opinion. You need to go to El American. El American is a very unique provider of news and other features, because it broadcasts in both English and Spanish networks. You don't find many dual language speaking networks out there in the marketplace. El American, in fact, is the only one that we know of at the news hour here in Austin, Texas. So please, when you need to get your news, when you need to find out what's going on in your community or in your nation, please go to El American. That is El American for all of your news. So we are into the final qualifying session of the morning, and not surprisingly, the Red Bull cars are out front, followed closely by Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, and then Lando Norris. So it's going to be interesting as we get to the end of this particular session. Who it is that we're going to see take pole. Like I said, I fully expect it to be, in qualifying times, I fully expect it to be Max Verstappen, but of course he will lose out to whoever is in second place, because he's taking the grid penalties. We lost in that session. We lost, as I mentioned, Danny Ricciardo. We lost Gasly. We lost Lance Stroll, Mick Schumacher, and Vettel. So those were the guys that did not make it from Q2 to Q3. No surprises there. I'm sure that McLaren would have liked to have seen Ricciardo get through, but of course he ended up getting bumped by Lando Norris in the end. So anyway, we're underway into Q3, and so far, we're not seeing any surprises at all. Like I said, Max Verstappen continues to set the pace and continues to be the driver to beat this weekend, even though he's starting from probably, and we won't find out for a little while, but he'll probably be starting in 15th or 16th position. Once the qualifying session ends, we'll have a good idea where it's going to be. But my gut feel is going to be in 16th or 15th position. Right now, Carlos Sainz is doing a really good job of matching Perez, especially for time. He's not quite there for Verstappen. Verstappen's a good, let's see, he's a good, a little over 2 to 3 hundredths of a second faster than Sainz. Don't be surprised if that time increases. We'll know in just a few minutes, as they're putting in another full lap right now. So the other thing is Mercedes are down there in the 7th, 8th position again. It's really interesting that during these practice and qualifying sessions that Mercedes continue to lag down there. But like I said, the last few races on race days, they've qualified down in the 6th or 7th position and then come back to get podiums. So something is going on there. Either they're playing some kind of game, but you can't play that kind of a game really, and you can't make those bigger changes. So you got to have good teamwork, and Mercedes no doubtedly has the some of the best strategists. Obviously, Red Bull has the best strategist out of them all. She's just amazing. Yes, I did say she. The Red Bull strategist for Max Verstappen is a female, and she is just an amazing person. So it's just really incredible. So we've just got new lap times come in, and looking at this, so Verstappen just opened up his lead to nearly 3/4 of a second on that lap over Carlos Sainz. So Perez continues to hang in 3rd. Charles Leclerc has just moved up to 4th, so that's very interesting. Esteban Ocon has come back up there, and it's still good to see that Albon with the Williams team is still up there in the 9th position. So, and I think this is going to be pretty much what I'm watching right now. I think is pretty much going to be the qualifying positions for the race tomorrow. We've got a little over 4 minutes left, and I just don't see anybody really doing anything. Well, that's really strange. Leclerc has been back in the pits, and he's there right now. That's kind of strange, this close to the end of the qualifying session. I don't know what Ferrari's thinking there, but nobody knows what Ferrari's thinking. That's the really strange thing. It's an amazing team, but their thinkers are not thinking very well. This is crazy. If they refuel him, put new tires and everything, he's going to be lucky to get out of there within the 2 minute and 15 second mark, which would make it that he wouldn't have time to get in another qualifying lap, because he'd need his out lap to get his tires up to temperature and all that kind of stuff, and he would not make it back across the finish line, the start finish line, before he could get another qualifying lap out. And so that's kind of really strange. But right now, the way it sits and the way it looks is that Verstappen is going to put in a 1:43, I'm thinking, a 1:44 time right now. He had a 1:43 in Q2. He's showing a 1:44 right now. So I think that Verstappen is just putting in the time that he knows will win him the pole position, even though he's not going to get pole, because he's going to be knocked down with the grid penalties. But that's something really interesting is Leclerc is coming out, but there's only 1.5 minutes left to go. So the only thing that I'm thinking here is that Leclerc is going to come out and give his teammate Carlos Sainz a tow and see if they can't get Carlos Sainz up to the fastest lap time and get him into pole position. Right now, the way it stands is Carlos Sainz, if nothing else changes, Perez is on his last lap. If Perez can't add more, take more time off his lap, he is going to start in second place, and Carlos Sainz is going to start in first. And so it's interesting to see what the Ferrari team are doing here, because right now, as it sits, Perez would have to gain a little over 0.4 of a second on this lap to knock Sainz off the pole position. So we're coming up now. In fact, the last cars are starting to come across the finish line, and Verstappen will have the fastest qualifying time, but he will start down in the field because of his grid penalties. So I'm going to predict that Verstappen on this one, he's going to start 15th, and Leclerc is going to start on 16th. And sure enough, you got to think that Leclerc's only goal there was to see if he could get a faster lap time for Carlos Sainz. But Carlos Sainz is going to start on the pole position tomorrow. So with Perez in second place, if I was a betting man, I would say that before the end of lap 1, in fact, before the end of the first corner of lap 1, that Perez will be leading the race tomorrow. So that's it for today. Let's meet up tomorrow when we will have race day. Folks, you know, these Formula One cars of today generate a lot of data. They've got hundreds upon hundreds of sensors all over them that are sending back data to the engineering crews so that they can manage and make sure that the car runs at peak performance the entire time. All that data needs somewhere to store. You store data in a data center. Businesses store data in a data center. What better place to store your data than a data center in Austin, Texas? I'm talking about Thenology. Thenology is a privately owned data center. It has a public cloud, a private cloud, co-location, and disaster recovery services. So whether you want to host a website, create a website, or you want to build your latest gaming scenarios, then Thenology is the place that you need to be. Maybe you're an accounting firm or a legal firm that needs somewhere to have all of your employees work from on a private cloud. Then Thenology is the place for you too. So folks, go to Thenology.com, that is Thenology.com, for all of your cloud and data needs. Welcome back, Formula One fans, to the Formula One News Hour. It is race day, and in just a few moments, the cars are already they're already in the starting grid, and they'll be off in exactly 1.5 minutes. So while we're waiting, I just want to go over a couple of the predictions that I made yesterday, and that is that I believe Verstappen will be in podium position by lap 20 and will in fact win the race today quite comfortably. But I am predicting that Verstappen, based on the performance of his car and himself yesterday, that he'll be well in the lead by lap 22, 23. So they're off now, and of course, a lot of jockeying for first place. Carlos Sainz has got off to a really good start. Perez has not. Perez now has dropped back into 4th place. That's not a very good start for Perez at all. But it's early in the race, so he should be able to make it up. They're going down through turn 4, turn 5 now, and down the straight. Oh no! Looks like that Lewis Hamilton drove over the top of Vettel's front wheel rather, and they both have gone flying off the track. Lewis Hamilton's car actually went into the air. I doubt if he'll be able to continue in that car. That looks like it could have resulted in a lot of damage. They're back. They're both back on the track now, and so looks like things are moving along. Bottas, for whatever reason, has not started at all. So it's going to be an interesting race. So we're up to lap 5 now, and Max Verstappen is making faster work of this move up the field than I thought. He's already into 7th place from 15th on lap 5. So an amazing start for Max Verstappen. So let's see what happens as the race goes on. So we're into lap 8 right now, and it looks like Charles Leclerc has found himself stuck in what we call a DRS chain. That's where you get 4 or 5 cars together, where they're all within half a second of each other, and they can all open up their flaps and get the DRS system engaged or disengaged. It allows the cars to go about 15 to 17 kilometers an hour faster, but that provides ample speed on straightaways for passing. But when there's 4 or 5 of them in a row like this, then they're all doing the same thing. So the only guy that's in danger of being passed is the guy in the very front, and then he'll slowly get moved back 1 or 2 places, and it just goes on, and it's a really bad thing for the drivers to get stuck in. But it looks like Charles Leclerc has found himself stuck in a DRS chain. You know, early on that I predicted, as you remember, that Verstappen would be in podium position by lap 20. You know, it looks like that I am going to be very wrong on that. At the way things are going, Verstappen could well be leading this race by lap 20. In fact, the way things are looking, Verstappen could be leading this race by about lap 14 or 15, the way things are moving up and moving through. The Haas teams look like they're doing a little better this morning. They're up around the 8 and 12 mark, respectively. Mick Schumacher has dropped all the way back down to the 17th place. And of course, Nicholas Latifi is just hugging on to last place being 18th at the moment, because we've got 2 cars out. Lewis Hamilton has dropped out of the race after that kind of airborne thing he took. I'm sure it did a bunch of rear suspension damage that forced him out of the race. They haven't come on and said yet what it is that's caused that, but Lewis Hamilton is out of the race, and Schumacher has dropped down there just one place up from Nicholas Latifi, which the Haas guys are not going to be happy about. But at least Magnussen is up there right around 11th or 12th right now, so he's just been overtaken. But still, it looks like Magnussen's is doing a pretty good job this morning, and the Haas team are going to be happy about that. Okay, so we're at lap 10 now, and Max Verstappen is just doing amazing. He is now literally 2.2 seconds off the lead. That's behind the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, and in second place his own teammate Perez managed to recover from that really bad start and has managed to get himself up into second place. But it's not going to be long before Max Verstappen is in second place and overtaking. So as I said earlier, it could well be that Verstappen is going to be leading this race by maybe lap 14 or 15. So the other cars are kind of falling into place a little bit. What's interesting is that the McLaren team have kind of switched positions. We've got Ricciardo leading by a good 3-4 places over Lando Norris, which as you remember from the start, Norris was starting inside the top 10, and Ricciardo was behind him. So Ricciardo's done some nice driving this morning. So it's coming up on lap 12, and I've noticed 1 or 2 of the cars, especially at the back of the pack, are starting to come in and get tire changes. It seems a little early. You'd expect that these tires are good for anywhere from 13 to 18 laps. Most of them are still running on the soft tire. There are a couple on the hard tire, but most of them on the soft tire, and those ones at the back of the field are actually coming in and getting new tires put on, and it looks like they're all going to the hard tire. So what they're looking for here is they're all expecting to make it to the end of the race and having a 1-stop instead of a 2-stop. the hard tires at this point should make it to the end of the race. So interesting happenings going on. George Russell, it's lap 16, and George Russell has just gone past Charles Leclerc over into 4th place. That's kind of a surprise. That means that Mercedes is performing much better today than yesterday, and in the practices on Friday. Remember what I said yesterday. I don't know if Mercedes is holding back or what's going on here, but obviously that Mercedes is doing much better today in terms of speed than it was yesterday in practice and qualifying, and in the first 2 practice sessions. So that's going to be interesting to watch. It's also interesting that he passed Leclerc, because Leclerc has got a very good car, and yet Russell was able just to breeze right on by him. So now Max Verstappen, we're on to lap 18, and Max Verstappen has taken the lead, and he's clear by about 3 to 4 seconds. So you can expect to see him at lap 16. I would expect to see him coming in for tires at around lap 18, and at that time he should be able to come out with the lead that he has, because Carlos Sainz has stopped for tires. So Sainz is a good 18, 19 seconds, actually 21 seconds back now. So that means that Verstappen can duck in, get new tires, and the only guy that would be ahead of him would be his teammate. So I wouldn't expect him to stay behind his teammate very long. So as I predicted, he's not only on the podium, but he's got the first place podium finish at the moment. So if nothing goes wrong, which I would not expect to happen, but you never know. We're dealing with the cars. We're dealing with lots of drivers on the track, and so of course many things can go wrong. But the way that the car's handling and the car is performing, then I have no doubt at all that Max Verstappen will go on and win this race. So the running order right now is Verstappen is in first place. He has stopped for tires, and as I predicted, he came back out just a few seconds behind his teammate, but he is stopped for tires. So we have Verstappen, Perez, and George Russell. Carlos Sainz, then George Russell, and then Charles Leclerc. They're your top 5 at the moment, and we're right at lap 20 right now. So I don't expect too many changes to go on. Certainly a bit further down the field, we might see things happening with the McLarens or with the Alfa Romeos. What's really interesting right now is that our Williams guy, Albon, he is maintaining the 9th position. So Williams have got to be really happy with him. That's a really nice start for him, and he's maintaining his position. Lots of cars moving around him, but he's managing to hang on to that 9th place position. So the top 5, it's lap 26 now. The top 5 have not changed that much. I guess the good news for Williams is they've managed to move up 1 place, so they've got to be very happy for that. The bad news is that the Haas drivers are falling down, and in fact Kevin Magnussen is down now into 16th or 15th position, so he's dropped about 3-4 positions. So I don't know what's going on there. You know, there was a lot of expectations this weekend after the summer break, with the new modifications that they'd put onto those Haas cars, that they would do really well today. In fact, I think they were hoping for at least a top 10 finish, but the way it's going right now, it does not look like that's going to happen. So we're at lap 28, and Red Bull are pulling Sergio Perez in for tires. So it looks like the Red Bull team are on a 2-stop strategy. In fact, they went with the medium compound tires, which means they have to be on a 2-stop strategy, because these, like I said, on the soft compounds, these tires are good for, you know, at best 16, 17 laps. Hard compounds, then they're good for maybe a little more. It just depends on the amount of competition and things like that that gets thrown into the mix, and whether or not these guys are fighting each other for positions. So, but they have gone ahead and pulled Perez in. That's going to drop him down into probably fourth position behind Carlos Sainz and the Mercedes of George Russell. But I don't think that they'll be worried too much about that. Both Sainz and Russell will have to come in for one more tire change. And I would imagine at lap 28 that they're expecting, if they put on the medium compound tires, that they're expecting that that Perez will be able to finish on those tires. And so at lap 28, so I'm thinking the strategy is going to be now for Max Verstappen to have at least a 23-24 second lead when they pull him in for tires, which means that he can go in, get tires, come back out and still maintain the lead. So it takes about 19 seconds from the time they pull off the track onto pit road. They get down pit road, they stop, change the wheels, and then they're out again. And by the time they hit the track again, it's about 19 seconds. So the actual time to change the tires is quite remarkable if you think about it. They change 4 wheels in 2.2 to 2.4 seconds. If they get anything over that, then as we've noted before, that those 3/4 of a second or 2 seconds in this at this level can make a huge difference. So yeah, the Max Verstappen should be able to get off the track, get his wheels changed and get back in and still maintain his leadership position. So at lap 30 now, and in fact Verstappen is leading by 27 seconds, which is just amazing. So the fourth place car of George Russell is coming in for tires, and so is, I would imagine, Sainz going to come in and get the same. So that will put Perez back into the second position spot, and Red Bull will go on at that point, I'm sure, and they're going to come in and win this race, coming in first and second, and it looks like Sainz is going to come in third and George Russell behind him at fourth, because I don't see too much changing between now and the end of the race. So on some of the cars further back, the Haas team, I don't know what's going on with the Haas team, because now they've fallen all the way back down into the, so obviously Latifi's hugging that last place, he loves to do that. But Haas is now down into 16 and 15. So you've got Latifi at 17, and then you've got the 2 Haas cars. It's just amazing what's happened. The other thing that's happened is Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris have switched positions, if you remember, and that's probably due to tire rotation, tire changes. They do what they call the undercut. Yeah, they do the undercut against their own teammates. So what's happened now is Lando Norris is actually two spots above Danny Ricciardo. He's in 11th place, and Ricciardo now is in 13th place. But I would expect that they will move up a couple more places before the end of the race. But the top 5, I don't think is going to change at all. So it's really a battle for the middle of the race now, is what's going to happen. Oh, we're on lap 35 now, and well, we've just seen a really nice move by Esteban Ocon. He just overtook 2 cars at once, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. That was a really slick piece of driving, so he has moved himself into 6th place, and that has actually moved the Williams team of Alex Albon back into 10th place at the moment. So he got past those 2 cars. Those 2 cars got past each other, which in the order of things just forced the Williams car back 1 spot. I would expect that Williams car will recover and maybe come back up and do a good job and get back to 9th or maybe even 8th before the end of the race. So we've got 5 laps left to go, and we've got Max Verstappen leading. Of course, we've got Sergio Perez in 2nd place. We have Carlos Sainz in 3rd place, and George Russell in 4th. It looks to me like Verstappen has kind of gone off the pace a little bit. He was opening up a lead of about 2.5 seconds per lap on the rest of the field. And this last couple of laps, I've noticed that he's only opened up about a 1 second lead. He obviously knows that he's in a comfortable position to win the race, so why put more stress on the car than he needs to? So the only thing that's got left to be decided, I think, is can Carlos Sainz take away the fourth place from George Russell. George Russell himself is trying to pull up on Carlos Sainz. He's got that gap down to about 2.7, 2.8 seconds. So that's doable if Russell can keep up the pace that he's doing. But he certainly has Leclerc on his tail as well. Leclerc is about 3.5 seconds back, but now he's got Vettel from the Aston Martin right there on his tail, and Vettel could well come up. When I say on his tail, he's probably back. I don't know, maybe. It's hard to say just looking at it quickly, because on the side of the screen it's tough to see sometimes. But no, actually I'm wrong. Vettel is actually not on his tail. I had the wrong car there. Vettel is actually he is in 6th place, but he's about 19-20 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. So Leclerc is going to be comfortably in 5th place. There's no reason at all that he's not going to come in 5th. I don't think he's going to catch George Russell, and I don't think George Russell is going to catch Carlos Sainz. So I think the end of the race is pretty much set. Well, here's a surprise. We've got 3 laps left to go, and the Ferrari team are pulling Charles Leclerc into the pits for a new set of tyres. They've got to be going after a fastest lap here and try and get themselves one more point in the championship competition ladder. If it works well, it's probably not a bad move. If it doesn't work well, then of course it could be another boneheaded move by Ferrari. So he's in, and they're changing the wheels now. Oh no! So Leclerc they've taken right at 2.9 seconds to change his tires. When you think that Vettel was about 19 seconds or 20 seconds behind, he is going to be lucky to get back out on the track and maintain his 5th position over Vettel. That's just amazing. And think about this. He's losing. He could well lose position over 3/4 of a second, and we've talked about how crucial seconds are in these races. And he's back out onto the track now, and in fact, Vettel is right on his tail. Vettel has DRS, and Vettel is going to pass Leclerc. Vettel has just put Leclerc back into 6th position. That is just amazing. Now, the question is, this is a long track. Can Vettel hang on to that 5th position now, or will Leclerc take it back? So, like we've only got 1.5 laps left to go. So Leclerc, with that move by Vettel, is not going to get the fastest lap. So that was kind of a waste of time, and bringing him in to put tires on and try and get that fastest lap, because the Ferrari team made a mistake, and it just took too long to change those tires, Leclerc has just taken that 5th place back from Vettel, and so it's going to finish in this order. It's going to finish with Verstappen, Perez, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Charles Leclerc are the top 5. So as we said about, I don't know, what was it, 10-15 laps ago, it didn't look like much was going to change there. So and in fact it has not, and the race will come to an end in about 3 minutes. and Verstappen will take yet another first place finish. An amazing drive for him, and not just for him, an amazing day for the Red Bull team. They're going to take first and second. That's going to open up a big lead on the Construction Championship trophy, and of course that's a big deal because that means money in their pockets. So they are going to be very happy with that, and so it's a good day for Red Bull. It's an okay day for Ferrari at the moment. It's third and fifth. They would have liked to. They started on pole, so they would have liked to have done better, and they would have liked Charles Leclerc to have done better. But they can't be too unhappy with that. In the top five, George Russell, a great day. He started back, I think, probably around 10th or 11th, no, 9th, I think, 9th. And so he's come up a nice few places. A bad day for Lewis Hamilton, and he's just been on TV admitting that it was a mistake on his part, and he's happy that he didn't knock Vettel out of the race, but he did end up knocking himself out the race. It was an okay day in fact, better than an okay day for the Williams team. Albon ended up bringing that car in 8th place. So Williams have got to be really happy. The Haas team have got to be scratching their head along with the McLarens. There's no reason for the McLaren. The McLarens came in behind the Aston Martins. Aston Martin had an okay day, but McLaren had a bad day, and the Haas had just a horrible day. So okay, so now this is just going to drive Ferrari nuts. When Charles Leclerc was coming down pit lane, he was speeding. And they've just announced that he's going to take a speeding penalty of 5 seconds. You know what that does? That puts Charles Leclerc back into 6th place. 6th place. So, every week Ferrari find a way to really mess up their chances of ever winning this Constructors' Championship and the World Championship, Driver Championship for Charles Leclerc. I mean, that's just, if they'd done nothing, if they'd just done absolutely nothing, they would have been in 5th, and they wouldn't have had this issue. And in the points standing, there's a lot of points difference, between 5th and 6th. And he didn't get the fastest lap point, so that probably cost him about 5-6 points. And right now that guy can use all the points that he could use. So listen, it's coming to the end of the very first Formula One News Hour, and I want to thank the sponsors again for everything. That would be CloudHub, GiveSendGo, Thinology, Inform America, L American, Moms for Liberty, and another one that I've forgotten, but we'll get them next week. And the other thing we can't forget is this program is produced by Andre Kuhn. Andre is both the producer and the technical genius behind getting this podcast to you. So a big thank you to Andre Kuhn for all that he's done in making this possible, and everything he'll do for making the ones in the future possible. So until next week, which is Zanderfoot, we will be signing off, and hope you've enjoyed this first of our podcasts.